Hi, welcome back to the channel. Well, special episode today to cover the brand new Baller STD. We're going to build it as a nice Overfinch model, which we'll talk more about later. Then we're going to test drive it. Obviously, first I have to buy it, so it's just over 1.7 million, either from here at Luxury Autos in matte green or just straight from the legendary site. Need to go to Del Perro to pick it up. We'll get it back to the workshop and get building. To make this car, Rockstar broadly took the latest L460 Range Rover, but then they sprinkled it with a lot of parts from the previous L405, like the side trim and the headlights, for example. So it's a bit of a mishmash of both, and I think that means you can build either. Today's car is based then on the 4th generation for two reasons. A, I want to build the specific car, and B, with the headlights and the side trims, once it's parked in a garage, it's going to look pretty close. If you disagree with me and think you should only build an L460 on this, well, of course that's fine, but stick around for some of the build because we do go through all the options and parts on the car and then later drive it, so you may still find the video worthwhile. What we're going to build today then is an Overfinch car. I'm sure you've heard of Overfinch if you like Range Rovers at all. They do external work, they do internal work, and they sometimes even do the mechanics of the car. Well, one very special Range Rover that came around towards the end of the L405 production was the Overfinch Velocity, and they only made 10 of them. And the idea was internal, external, and also something to control the exhaust to make it even louder. Well, in 2021 they brought out just 3 Velocity Final Editions in Fuji white. This was an Overfinch USA model and the car cost $285,000, so quite a high price there for the exclusivity and the little extras. Building this was a voyage of discovery for me, because whilst I am voicing it over later, I had no real idea when I started if there would be enough parts available for this car, but there are. Now the car is painted in Fuji white, and it's hard for me to see on the photos quite exactly what that means, but I believe it's a very, very pale silver, almost like a grey white or an off-white, and I can't tell what I'm doing on this car with matte green, so the first thing we're going to do is paint it that colour. Now you could have a little play, I think, with crew colours if you really wanted to, but much easier just to pop in and put on a frost white metallic. And I have also added a frost white pearl, I think, just to give it a bit more reflection. This gives you our sort of grey or off-white colour, whilst looking suitably expensive like a lot of these metallic whites actually are. I think we'll look at secondary and trim and stuff as we go through. So back to the top. Now with the arch covers, I think for a lot of standard Range Rovers you won't use the arch covers, but it's nice to see that you can have them in primary and in secondary or carbon and black. Well, there are some subtle arch covers in carbon on the car that we're doing. They're not quite as comprehensive as this, but beggars can't be choosers, as we say, so the carbon arch kit is the one I am going for. Only you can decide about performance and armour, etc. on your car, on how much you're going to drive it. But as I was going to test it for you, I went straight to the max from the beginning, so full armour here, race brakes. Then onto the body trim. Now this trim is even in that sort of forged or hand-woven carbon look on the Overfinch. And as you can see, we have a carbon trim option available here. That's what we're going for, carbon trim, but it's interesting to see that primary and secondary there, which should enable people to come up with quite a few different looks on it, and also the subtle difference of black trim as well. Onto the bumper. Well, the bumper itself can't be changed. It's luckily not a million miles off. It's suitably aggressive. What we're changing is the splitter. And I think this last one, the race spec splitter, is the closest in the shape to the splitter that is on the Overfinch. So of the only 4 choices, that's the one we're going to take. Onto the back bumper, a little disappointing as you so often get. I think the Cavalcade was the same. You get into these weird diffusers straight away. And all I want is a subtle carbon diffuser moulded into the bumper, and I can't have it. So I'm afraid we'll have to stay stock on the bumper. Max out the engine. Another disappointment with the exhausts here. I want the sort of twin squarish exhaust moulded in. Well, I've got the twin sort of trapezoid exhausts moulded in, but if I start to move down the list, look, every exhaust hangs below the bumper and they all look wrong. So really going to have to stay with the standard exhaust for this. Now for the hood, I was pleased going through that there's a number of decent hoods, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to build an SVR out of this car, no problem at all. But that's not what we want. We want the black centre raised bit, and as we keep coming down, bingo, rally hood. Now I'm not sure why it's called a rally hood exactly, but that's pretty much what we want. And the next one down looks nice as well, the vented rally hood. It's just that I don't want those other two vents. I can't help but wish that Overfinch had put them in though. They look rather cool. When I next go to the car meet, I will do the lights, so I'm not touching them here. I'm not putting a livery on, but I thought you might like to see the liveries. So we can have white stripes, which I don't think suit a Range Rover, nor the black stripes. And then we have the same again, but offset. Now this one, there's for King and Country. They're colour and black and white versions of the same one. Obviously aping the Union Jack. I really quite like this, and I just can't help but think that there has been some Range Rover in the past that was painted in this way for something special. I mean, it could have been the Olympics in London or something. I just think that there must be a basis for those, but if not, cool design. Then we've got these daft camos that I just don't like. On down to the mirrors, I want the carbon mirrors. I think just the carbon stock are closest. You can actually go on down and get some slightly different shapes, but I don't think they particularly help. Onto mudguards. Now they look rather good. I can imagine many builds using these, but they don't work on our car. And I'm going to stick with the white number plate or license plate because it's a white car. Blue and white 3 I think looks nice. For the respray, we know that we've gone frost white metallic for the primary. For the secondary, it only seems to be covering on the roof here the shark fin aerials, and of course there's 2 when there should be 1. But as I flick through and rotate around the car, I could see nothing else, so it's just those aerials plus whatever you choose as secondary parts on the car, and it just so happens we haven't used any. So then we move on to the interior trim for this Overfinch car. It's pretty simple. It's a very opulent but black interior inside. And that works here. The whole concept of this car, of course, is a very pale colour, contrasting lots and lots of black. For the roof, this stock roof is about right because there is some black around the panoramic roof on the Range Rover, and I'm so pleased they gave us the panoramic roof as well. Spoiler, the stock spoiler is around the right shape, but we need carbon. Even this just carbon trunk upper looks pretty good, but as you go down you get more and more of a cutout, and whilst the cutout is not the same shape as the way that the cutout is on the Overfinch one, it's close enough, and without the photograph to compare to in your garage you'll probably think it's perfect. And I'm going to go carbon aggressive trunk cutout in the end, and I'm not doing these silly ones at the end of the list. I don't want to put a sun strip on, but you can see they're nice subtle sun strips if you do. Now for the suspension, I initially thought it would be down to the bottom, and then of course it did this amusing thing. So looking at it, lowered suspension is going to work because I need a gap. Not much of a gap though between the tyres and the arches. Stock is too high, street is too low. And I say lowered is in that Goldilocks zone of being correct. Take the transmission all the way. Now, I paused here because I was thinking, it's a 5 litre supercharged V8 and we have a supercharged wine, not a turbo wastegate going. But even so, I'd like it to the maximum, and at least it is a noise that references the car. I want to talk about the standard wheels for a second and say thank you Rockstar. If I built my Petrolix Blue L460, which is almost what this build video was, I could just have used these wheels. It's fantastic to have some good Range Rover wheels on here because they're really hard to replicate with the in-game wheels. So hats off, fantastic job. However, we're looking for something more aggressive for this specific build, and it's really between Modern Mesh and Forged Star in the track category. Now the Modern Mesh, as you can see, the little points are missing where the pieces should join near the rim. They do join closer on Forged Star, but I don't think the Forged Star overall is styled quite as closely as Modern Mesh. I mean, you can go between them and decide. I've gone for Modern Mesh. I do prefer it of the two, and once you paint it in black, you're not going to worry quite whether those spokes join at the rim or not. Don't forget your bulletproof tyres, of course. And when it comes to the tints, the car is heavily tinted from the pillar back and is lightly tinted around the driver. I think overall, and especially to go with the light and dark theme, therefore a dark smoke works the best, even though it's a bit tinted on the front windows more than it should be. That completes the build, and I think the car looks absolutely cracking. So despite the fact you were going to get a Petrolix Blue L460 up until an hour before this car released, I'm really pleased with this. So first let's take a look out in the sunshine at the car, and yes, I'm really pleased, and I do think that that pearlescent reflecting there does give the paint that expensive look that you sometimes get. For example, if you buy a Golf and you want onyx white, it's a really expensive colour to have, and it gives that expensive look to the slightly off silvery white. Absolutely excellent, really pleased. The whole thing's come out really well. Yes, we get to the back and it does look a bit more like a 460, but you know, I'm going to live with it. Can you live with it? So we'll head off now and drive the car. But one thing I will say, if you want full performance stats, if you want real proper testing of the car, of course you're going to see what Bruffy has to say about the car, not what I have to say. And if you want off-road testing, I haven't done that at all. I don't consider myself an off-road tester. I know friend and subscriber of the channel, The Way, often does off-road testing, and I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't do an off-road drive of this car. Anyway, I have an excuse. You never see these things off-road anyway. I love the way the car drives. How does it drive? Well, certainly you feel the weight of the car. I mean, it must be over 2 tons in real life. I want to feel the weight of the car. If this went round the corners like a Lotus, there would be something terribly wrong. So they've done that very well. It sounds good. It sounds very good. It doesn't sound very, very good, and I can't help but think that the actual Overfinch, with its Bluetooth controlled variable sort of noise exhaust, could be throatier, could sound more Mustang than Range Rover. But overall, this is a good noise, and if you're building a standard Range Rover, you won't be disappointed. It's got a good top speed. We're going to take it on the coast road now, just wang it up to maximum. But when you're taking these things through town, you're like, yeah, this is fast enough, to be honest. So that's good. When you're cornering, if you get it just right, the car will four-wheel drift, and that is a wonderful feeling, just to have it balanced and drifting. If you ease off, of course, at all, you will get lift-off oversteer, and really there's as much oversteer there as you want. So that is great, and you don't really seem to get much in the way of understeer. Now, of course, at Range Rover, it is a big SUV that does handle well in the real world, so I'm thinking they've done a good job here. And overall, if you have the spare money for this car, and you have the spare spot for this car, I would heavily consider buying this car. And if you have to get rid of one of those free Range Rovers that came off the street to make space, you know, I think I would do that. Really good. Very pleased with Rockstar. I'm very pleased with this, and I like my build. Let me know down below what you think of my build, what you're going to build on the car. That's perhaps even more important. I'd love to hear that. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you thought it was rubbish, well, give it a dislike. But do tell me down below what was rubbish so that I can change that for the future. Video seems to have gone on a bit longer than I thought, so if you got this far, well, thank you very much. And the code word to put in the comments to show you got there is pheasant shooting. Because obviously a lot of these cars go pheasant shooting. Now, there is pheasant shooting, not peasant shooting, I must point out. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this, and thank you so much for watching.